Breaking the Silence: How Your Story Heals Generations. I recently had the privilege of interviewing Javon Wynter, a true warrior of the human spirit whose work in trauma recovery has transformed countless lives across communities that have long suffered in silence. What makes Javon extraordinary isn't just their profound understanding of healing pathways, but their rare ability to create sacred spaces where painful truths can finally breathe. Through their groundbreaking programs and compassionate approach, Javon has literally rewired the neural pathways of generational trauma for thousands of survivors. Their impact ripples through families, communities, and will continue changing lives for generations to come. What struck me most about our conversation wasn't just the depth of wisdom Javon shared, but how that wisdom illuminated a truth many of us, especially high achieving Black women, have been waiting to hear. Our stories have power, real, transformative, world changing power. For too long, we've been told to stay silent, to keep family business private, to be strong, to move on. But what if silence isn't strength? What if silence is actually what keeps us bound? What if silence is the very thing that ensures our wounds never truly heal? I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine a wound, deep, jagged, painful, that you've covered with the thinnest bandage. You've convinced yourself it's healing because you can't see it. You've painted a smile over it. You've built a career around it. You've created an identity that carefully steps around it. But underneath that flimsy covering, infection spreads. The pain doesn't diminish, it metastasizes. This is what happens when we bury our stories of trauma, abuse, and abandonment. We think we're protecting ourselves, but we're actually preventing our healing. We think we're being strong, but we're actually bleeding internally. During my conversation with Javon, three profound truths emerged that I believe can revolutionize how we approach healing, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. The first truth: your story has power and purpose. When you speak your truth, you're not seeking sympathy, you're not airing dirty laundry, you're not being dramatic or attention seeking, all the things we've been conditioned to fear. You're giving voice to silent pain and creating pathways for healing, not just for yourself, but for others walking similar journeys in isolation and shame. There's a community program I learned about through Javon that illustrates this beautifully. This initiative created storytelling workshops specifically for survivors of childhood abuse. When participants first arrived, shame hung in the room like a heavy curtain. Many couldn't look each other in the eye, let alone speak about their experiences. One woman had spent 43 years never uttering a word about what happened to her between the ages of 7 and 12. Another had told her story before, but only to therapists who clinically documented it, never to someone who truly understood from lived experience. A third woman came in, convinced her experience wasn't bad enough to warrant taking up space in the room. The facilitators, survivors themselves, created something revolutionary: a judgment free space where stories could breathe. No rushing, no minimizing, no comparing wounds to determine whose hurt counted more, no pressure to forgive before feeling, no expectation to package trauma into neat inspirational sound bites. Something remarkable happened in that room. As stories emerged, first in whispers, then in steady voices, sometimes through tears, sometimes through unexpected laughter, shame began to dissolve. Not overnight, but gradually, like watching ice melt in the sun. Participants reported something that statistics can't capture: a profound sense of returning to themselves, of reclaiming parts they'd abandoned in survival mode. One woman described it this way: I've spent my whole life feeling like I'm performing being human. In that room, speaking my truth, I finally felt real. Many began breaking toxic family patterns they'd unconsciously carried for years, patterns of silence, of minimizing abuse, of protecting perpetrators, of blaming themselves. Their stories, once published in anthologies, reached national audiences and inspired similar programs across the country. This is the power of speaking what was once unspeakable. This is what happens when we refuse to let shame write our stories. The second truth Javon emphasized: healing is possible and necessary. No matter how deep the scars, no matter how long you've carried them, no matter how many times you've been told to just get over it, healing can happen. It requires courage, the courage to speak what was once unspeakable, and faith in the process of restoration. I'm reminded of a mentorship initiative Javon highlighted that pairs Black women entrepreneurs who survived abuse with younger women facing similar challenges. These mentorships address something rarely discussed: how trauma affects our professional confidence, our ability to negotiate, our comfort with visibility, our relationship with money and success. The founder of this program had built a seven-figure business while still carrying unhealed wounds from childhood sexual abuse. On paper, she was a success story. In private, she was battling debilitating anxiety, imposter syndrome, and self sabotage. Her healing journey transformed not just her inner world, but her business approach. She began to see that her trauma responses, hypervigilance, perfectionism, people pleasing, had shaped her business model in unsustainable ways. As she healed, she created this mentorship program specifically addressing how trauma manifests in entrepreneurship. The challenges were significant. Many mentees struggled with deep mistrust after past betrayals. Some found themselves sabotaging business opportunities because success felt unsafe or undeserved. Others couldn't set boundaries with clients, undercharged chronically, or avoided visibility despite having extraordinary gifts. The solution wasn't just business coaching, it was faith based empowerment combined with practical skills training. It was creating spaces where women could say, my past affected me in these specific ways, and I'm learning to build something new. The outcomes? Mentees launched successful ventures while reporting something equally valuable: improved mental health resilience. They weren't just building businesses, they were rebuilding themselves. They were proving that healing and success aren't separate journeys, they're intimately connected. This program, founded by a survivor entrepreneur who authored a memoir similar to Bruised But Not Broken, helped shift perceptions around survivors' potential as leaders within Black professional communities. It challenged the narrative that successful women have somehow overcome their trauma, replacing it with the truth that healing is an ongoing journey that can fuel rather than hinder our purpose. This brings me to the third truth from my conversation with Javon. You are not alone. Your experience matters. There are many walking through similar struggles today. Recognizing this shared experience fosters empathy, connection, and community support for survivors at all stages, hurting, healing, or beyond. One of the most powerful examples Javon shared involved faith centered healing programs designed specifically for Black women overcoming emotional abuse. These church affiliated programs addressed a critical gap: the stigma around mental health within religious contexts. and the challenge of integrating spiritual authority into counseling. Many women in these programs have been told to just pray about it, or that seeking therapy showed a lack of faith. Some carried the additional burden of having their abuse minimized by spiritual leaders who didn't understand trauma. Others had been spiritually abused, their faith weaponized against them through misused scripture or toxic theology. The solution was revolutionary in its simplicity, incorporating scripture based teachings alongside psychological support groups, creating spaces where faith and mental health weren't competing forces, but complementary paths to wholeness, acknowledging that sometimes prayer is calling a therapist. Sometimes spiritual warfare looks like setting boundaries. Sometimes being a good steward of what God has given you means healing your nervous system. Participants experience renewed spiritual strength coupled with tangible progress in emotional well being. The model has been adopted by multiple churches, aiming to provide holistic care, bridging spirituality with trauma informed practices. This matters deeply because when we're hurting, isolation compounds our pain. But when we see others walk in similar paths, especially those who share our cultural and spiritual contexts, healing becomes not just possible, but visible. Now, I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. Talking about trauma isn't easy. Some of you might be thinking, this is too heavy for me today. I honor that. Your healing journey is yours to navigate at your own pace. But for those ready to take a step, even a small one, I want to share an actionable challenge. Find the courage to speak your truth, whether aloud to someone you trust or written down if speaking feels too vulnerable right now. Begin small but be consistent because every spoken word chips away as silences hold on pain. Reach out for support where needed, whether from trusted friends, mentors, or faith leaders, and commit to daily acts toward breaking cycles that no longer serve you. Remember that in the journey toward wholeness, strength isn't about carrying everything alone. True strength is knowing when to set down the cape, when to rest, when to say, this hurt me and I'm ready to heal. As Black women, many of us were taught that vulnerability is weakness, that needing help means we fail somehow, that our value lies in how much we can endure without breaking. But what if our greatest strength lies in our willingness to be soft, to tend to our wounds, to speak our truths? What if, as Javon so powerfully demonstrated through these examples, our healing isn't just for us? What if it's the most powerful gift we can give future generations? I'm reminded of something my grandmother used to say: some silence protects nothing but pain. She was right. When we break the silence around our trauma, we don't just heal ourselves, we create permission for others to heal too. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine a young woman watching you heal, watching you speak your truth, watching you set boundaries, watching you prioritize your well being. Now imagine her thinking, if she can do it, maybe I can too. That's the ripple effect of your healing. That's the generational impact of your courage. So today, I challenge you to break the silence that has kept you bound. I challenge you to believe that your story matters, not despite its painful chapters, but because of them. I challenge you to see your healing not as a selfish act, but as a revolutionary one that can transform lives beyond your own. The question isn't whether healing is possible, After hearing Javon's insights and these powerful stories, we know it is. The question is, will you be brave enough to begin? Will you be the one who ends the generational transmission of silence and shame? Will you be the ancestor your descendants thank for having the courage to heal? Your voice matters. Your healing matters. And the world is waiting for the gifts that will emerge when you finally break the silence and speak your truth. Thank you